Hey everyone, hi, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be discussing 3 chunky books that I don't think is worth your time. I'm excited to talk about this with you. I also want to know what are chunky books that you don't think are worth my time. I would love to know that. We can just feel cathartic together about long books that just felt like a time waster. So yeah, if you're new to my channel, then know that my name is Shelly and I really love books and reading. And I like to, help you out a little bit, just as you often help me out to not waste your time on books that I don't think are worth it. So yeah, if you're not yet subscribed and you're enjoying the vibe, perhaps subscribe, maybe like the video. But without any further rambling on, let's go ahead and get into the meat of this video. My partner in crime with all of these books, who has been there with me through thick and thin, it just happens that we happen to have read all these books together, is my friend Anita. And there is no other bonding experience than to commiserate over a book together. Maybe that's why we're so close. But just as we've read bad books together, we've read wonderful books together. But I think it's funny that she and I have read these, all 3 of these books together. The first being We Were the Mulaneies by Joyce Carol Oates. This is set in the 1970s, and it is about the Mulvaney family. They are, they have some wealth. They're doing pretty well. They're a very stable middle-class American family, and their father's a businessman. And the inciting incident is that Marianne is their oldest daughter, who's a teenager at the time, is assaulted. And it's about the way the family falls apart in a lot of ways. I just remember how dull this book is. And like with all of these books, it's like if the book was pared down to 250 pages or even 300 pages, this one in particular clocks in at 454 pages. If it was pared down a good bit, it feels like it could have been something really wonderful. But because Joyce Carol Oates is so long-winded within these pages, it felt like the book just dragged on and on and on. And I've thought about it in the years since reading this book. It's been a couple years. I've thought about it and I've wondered, is it because I didn't like the family falling apart? Is it because I had an issue with the family? No, because one of my favorite books is The Bee Sting, which is about a family crumbling under financial pressure and the way they weirdly start to act strange and almost out of character under this pressure, or maybe even within character, but it's under this pressure that they're almost like the worst sides of themselves come out. This, We Were the Mulaneies, on the other hand, just felt like it was saying nothing. It felt like it was saying nothing. And I mean, there was like one scene after the inciting incident where I was like, okay, like that was really satisfying. But everything else was just kind of like, I don't get what the point is. Like, I don't get it. And then really it was the ending that ticked me off the most. The ending to me was just awful. It was really bad. And if you want to know why I feel like the ending was bad, I'll leave it in a comment. I'll leave it in a comment, or I'll reply to your comments. But yeah, I just thought it was awful. And it actually put me off to Joyce Carol Oates as a whole, which is so sad because I know that she has such huge fans here on Booktube. And I don't think that all of her work is like this. I just think that this happened to be, We Were the Mulaneies happened to be one of her most popular works, and it didn't work for me, but it doesn't mean that all of her books won't work for me. So I'm like, I want to get back into her, but I feel very trepidatious in doing so. The next book clocks in at 736 pages, and it is The Covenant of Water by Abraham Verghese. This is a multi-generational family saga about a family living in Southwest India, and it spans from 1900 to 1977. of course, you have the ups and downs of this family, the origin story of when it started, and then you go through the generations. But by far, the most interesting character to follow was this Scottish doctor named Digby, who, through a series of events, his hands are damaged, and his livelihood as a physician is less viable. And so he needs to find a different way to repurpose his life in a sense. And so he gets involved in a leprosy colony that is completely isolated from other communities because of the stigma of leprosy. And from there, we get these really interesting descriptions of different surgeries, different ways that these doctors are helping this community live and survive. And in a lot of ways, we see Digby come through as a different person, like finding a new way of life, even after his tragic incident. I sort of chuckle because I find his story the most interesting, even though he's not like the center, or I don't know, is he the center of the book? It's like, it's a multi-generational family saga about this family in the Southwest, living in Southwest India. And Digby is only sort of connected to that family in more of a roundabout way. He's not like the center of the family. So it's interesting that Verghese made the most interesting character somebody who's outside of the family, which is interesting. And Verghese, hands down, has some great like medical writing. It was so interesting to like his descriptions of different surgeries and different ways to problem solve. And I don't know, that part was really interesting. It was almost like as my phone goes off, it was almost like everything else around it that was slightly lackluster. Like, I almost find it humorous that this doctor, who was one of the main characters, but again was connected to this family, and it's a multi-generational family saga on the outside, that this doctor was the most interesting character. Now, I had surmised that it might have been because this character was most like Verghese himself. Verghese was, I believe, a doctor, and so there might have been like a liveliness to the writing of this character because Verghese was very similar to that character and really could honestly and very interestingly write his struggles. But it was everything. It was so long. It was so tediously long. And though there were some, I would say, of the 3 books I'm going to talk about, I think this had the most shining moments in it. But overall, it really needed to be edited way down. Oh my gosh, my phone is going off. There we go. And it needed to be edited way, 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 way down, because I think it could have been better marketed and better written if it was really just about Digby and not this multi-generational family saga, which is what I felt like Verghese set out to write. And yet what came through was this individual character. I hope that makes sense. But mostly, again, it was so long. And there were just some characters that I did not care about. I remember that Anita and I talked about this a ton. But we did not care about some of the characters. And that was like a big sticking point for us. We were like, I mean, there was a couple that you cared about. But when you have this huge cast of characters, it was like, when you only care about 3 of them, that's a problem. You're not invested in like the majority of the character struggles, which is just sad. So anyways, don't waste your time on this at all. Like, if you want a good book by Verghese, read his first book, which I can't remember what it was called. But yeah, read his first book. That was much, much better than this behemoth of a thing. The last book is the longest of all 3. It is 876 pages, and it is a book that I read most recently. It is The Myths of Avalon by Marion Zimmer Bradley. Now, this is a feminist retelling, taking a character that is often evil, one-dimensional, named Morgan Le Fay, and it's recasting her as Morgane, who is this political figure, this spiritual leader who has powers that are connected to her heritage in the myths of Avalon. Like, that's where she gets her power and has connections with her power. And it's about her growing up and sort of being on the outside of the of like Uther Pendragon and Lancelot. She's kind of outside of it, but will pop in and sort of wreak havoc. I don't know, it's not really wreaking havoc, but like will come in and influence things here, there, and everywhere. And there's a lot of like love story crossing moments. There's I'm trying to think of the character's name who ends up playing a really big part. Guinevere is a big character. There's a lot about mother-daughter relationships, sister relationships, and female-to-female relationships, which all sounds really good, but a big fat but is that pretty much nobody grows in the novel at all. There is very, very little character growth. Those who are like star-crossed lovers and always yearning for someone, that never really gets, like, nobody ever grows up at all. It's the weirdest thing. You would think that in 800 plus pages that you would see character growth from the beginning to the end. No, it's so strange. And I remember mentioning this to Anita, and she agreed. She was like, oh yeah, there's no growth. There's there is so little growth. So it's like things happen. And as a character-driven reader, I'm yearning for that growth, that dynamic range of a character. And yet, you read all these things, all this stuff happens. You know, fights and arguments and like battles, she goes into the mists and she gets her, powers, and she comes out of the mists and then she goes back to the mists. There's a lot of that. There's a lot of going in and out of the mists. There's way too much of that. And it's like you think that she's going to change. You think that she's going to realize that the person she's in love with, she shouldn't be in love with. For a lot of the characters, they're all sort of mismatched in a weird way. And you get to the end, and there was like nothing. There was literally nothing. I was like, Marion Zimmer Bradley, it takes a very skilled writer to flatten out a character that is so flat from beginning to end. Like, that takes skill. I don't even know how you did that, but that's what happened. And what's interesting is that there would be these exciting moments, and you would think those exciting moments would bring about change, and yet it didn't. It didn't at all. So it was really a weird book, and I really think that is like one of the sticking points. I mean, I have my strong opinions about Marion Zimmer Bradley as an author, in particular as a person, as a human being. And I also just think that there was like no reflection. There was no growth. It was a bizarre reading experience. So, having said that, these are the three Mammoth, the three chunksters, the three big old books that I think that are just absolutely not worth your time. I will maybe follow this up with the three Mammoths that I think are worth your time because they're fantastic. But here were three that I kind of wish. Do I regret having read them? I try not to regret many things, and I don't necessarily regret it because I learned something about myself and I got to sort of pick apart what I do and do not like about something. But gosh, these were painful mistakes. All right, well, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. And I hope to see you all in my next one. Bye.